This week on the podcast, I have the privilege of sharing my conversation with you where I got to sit down with Secondary Science Simplified listener and It's Not Rocket Science resource user Alex Crim, who recently completed his second year of teaching. After spending his first year teaching middle school science, he transitioned to teaching ninth grade biology and AP environmental science at Devon Preparatory School. Before entering education, he played college baseball and initially majored in exercise science before ultimately earning his degree in biology. He is currently finishing his master's degree in secondary education while teaching and coaching full-time. Prior to teaching, he spent 4 years coaching college baseball. He now serves as the JV head baseball coach at his school, where he enjoys combining his passion for athletics with mentoring and teaching students both in the classroom and on the field. In this episode, Alex's energy and enthusiasm for teaching high school students is so evident and so contagious. He shares a wealth of knowledge despite his only 2 years of experience thus far. He talks about teaching AP environmental science for the first time, why he loves teaching biology, the two things more important than getting through all of the content, and a big misconception many people have about high schoolers. We also covered grading hacks, work-life balance with the demands of teaching, coaching, and working on his master's, and how he is simplifying his life right now. I genuinely loved talking with Alex, and I wish he could be my son's high school biology teacher and baseball coach. I know that my boys would absolutely love him, and I think that y'all will really enjoy him too. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Alex Crim. This is Secondary Science Simplified, a podcast for secondary science teachers who want to engage their students and simplify their lives. I'm Rebecca Joyner from It's Not Rocket Science. As a high school science teacher turned curriculum writer, I am passionate about helping other science teachers love their jobs, serve their students, and do it all in only 40 hours a week. Are you ready to rock the time you spend in your classroom and actually have a life outside of it? You are in the right place, teacher friend. Let's get to today's episode. Hey, Alex, how are you?
Good. How you doing, Rebecca?
I'm good. I'm so excited to talk to you. It's been a long time coming. We've been corresponding in DMs and now it's here. So thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, of course. I'm excited.
It's going to be great. So you just finished your second year teaching, which I love talking to people with all sorts of range of experience. So this is fun for me to get to talk to you. I would love just to hear how the year went and how work-life balance was. I know first year is always insane and you're a coach, so that's also tricky. So I'd love to hear kind of how that went for you.
Yeah, I think this year was much better than my first year teaching. First year teaching is just is a wild experience. I don't think anyone can ever prep you enough for that.
Mm-hmm.
But the school that I was at was really supportive. They allowed you, they treated you as a professional, which I really enjoyed because I'm a type A personality. I have all my, ducks in a row, but it went well because I learned from a lot of my mistakes from my first year. I'm very reflective. And then also like the help of It's Not Rocket Science resources from the curriculum to the podcast episodes to the PDs that I did. It was really helpful in getting my system set up. I spent all last summer, I'd go on walks and just your podcast would be playing as I walked. And I'd have to stop my walk and go home so I could write down, take notes
That's
of
awesome.
some of the things you're saying, some of the guests you had on. So in terms of work-life balance, I'm sure if you ask my wife, it was a lot better than my first year.
Well, hey, those people in our real lives are the best metric of, hey, am I doing better on this or whatever. So I'm glad that, the podcast and the resources have been a small part of your success this year. And you had a big change. You went from 7th grade life science, right?
Yeah, it was sixth grade, but
Okay.
it was life science nonetheless.
But you're still in the same school, but now you're teaching high school?
Now I actually changed schools. So
Okay.
last year I was in the city of Philadelphia doing that middle school life science class. And then my new role is at Devon Preparatory School, which is a little bit closer to, where I'm living, which is the King of Prussia area. Yeah. So made that change. I still had a 7th grade physics class. We talked a little bit about that.
Oh, yeah.
So I did have a 7th grade physics class, but then I had 9th grade CP bio, 3 sections of that, and then 1 section of AP environmental.
Okay. So did you feel like you were completely starting over, not just at the school, but just new courses too?
Yeah, it definitely felt like another first year in terms of the content, learning how the school works itself. That's something that I had to learn, that schools kind of have different ways of doing things. Things that are accepted at one school aren't going to be accepted at another, just the systems they run themselves. So it was kind of like a first year, but it is an all boys school, which I do
Oh,
think has helped. So
interesting.
I've coached baseball for, practically in the last 8 years. So, teaching boys was kind of, easy for me. So that kind of helped with the transition too.
That's so fascinating. I've always like wondered what that would be like at the upper level to have the divided schools like that. I think that's really fascinating. Okay, so I also always just think too, your school environment just totally affects your job. So I think that's encouraging for you to hear, like, just how the transition's been positive, and because I think people are often afraid to change schools, and you obviously weren't afraid because you did it after
Yeah.
just 1 year. What has it been like teaching high school? And especially you have AP Environmental too, right? That's, like, totally different than middle school.
Yeah. I mean, teaching high school, the ninth graders were more familiar to me because I did
Mhm.
middle school last year, and ninth graders are essentially the middle schoolers of high school.
Yeah.
They're
They
still a
are.
little immature, they're chatty, but, a lot of them still kinda have that motivation and drive, especially at the school I'm teaching at. A lot of the students there have that motivation and drive, which is easy and helpful when you're a teacher trying to get something accomplished. The upperclassmen was definitely an adjustment.
Mhm.
I had some seniors in there, and senioritis, I think, started in August for them.
100%.
And I think AP Environmental, and I know you've had other guests on, a lot of times the AP Environmental is the easy AP, the
Mhm.
easy AP science. So I did have some guys that thought that this was the easy AP, and when I came in there teaching it like an AP class should be taught, there was some pushback, there was
Mhm.
some pulling, so it was an adjustment, but hey, we got it through, and all my guys after taking the national exam were like, "That was easy." I was like, "Well, I'm glad I prepared you."
Yeah, that's awesome. I always love freshmen because I just think, like you said, they're the middle schoolers of high school, but they just change so much. Like, especially the boys. I always remember because my last school they had uniforms because it was private. By the end of the year, all of their khaki pants were like capris because they all grow like 6 inches
Yeah.
freshman year, and their voices change, and it's fun to be a part of their growth. I feel like during that time. You mentioned in your application that biology is your favorite subject to teach. So why do you think that? And is there any topic that you most enjoy or you feel like you teach really well?
Yeah, it's funny enough when my students ask me about biology, like biology was not a favorite of mine when I was taking it in high school. It just wasn't. It was a lot of sit and get, a lot of the cookie cutter, labs, but when I went to college, after I got injured at my first school, I had to transfer, and I was like, I want to get this done as quickly as possible. And at the time, I was a kinesiology major. And I said to my new school, like, what major can I do that's going to get me out of here as quickly as possible? And they said biology. I said, all right, like here we go. And the school just did such a great job. I had such great professors, when I had just regular bio to genetics to ecology, and they did so many hands-on things. And it really made me appreciate that biology is literally everything that's going around us, right?
Mhm.
It's all these living things, and I find it fascinating. Some of my students, some of them find it fascinating that, you take something like DNA that has 4 bases, just A, T, C, G, but the way you can rearrange those and the differences and the complexities that you can have, that there's microorganisms that are living around us that we can't see but contribute to our lives.
Mhm.
So, like, there's just so many complexities in how we're all interconnected that I just find fascinating. And I think some of my students, because of how some of the ways I teach things and the phenomenon that I bring into it, incorporating daily life stuff,
Mhm.
I think some of them appreciate, like, wow, like this is something, I had so many things on my feedback form. They always send an end of the year course survey. And like a lot of the guys were like, I didn't like science before taking you. And I'm sure some of that is the personality that I bring and just myself in general, but I also think I made science applicable. Like I'm an athlete, like I'm the baseball coach, but I can also geek out on this bio and this science. And they really enjoyed that. In terms of a topic I teach well, I think like genetics and heredity.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of students can relate to the genetics and heredity unit. But like I had a couple twins that I taught. I had brothers. I had a kid that was a colorblind. I had a kid that had sickle cell anemia.
Mm.
So like just being able to make it relevant, like being able to like ask, hey, Chris, do you mind if I talk about you having color blindness? Like, and he didn't know how it was inherited. So like there's our sex-linked recessive traits. Like
Mhm.
so making it relevant, asking them questions, presenting them with images and saying, how does this happen? Like how
Mhm.
does something like rolling your tongue is just dominant recessive, but how is eye color determined? How's height determined? And they really like dove into it because they're like, I don't know how. They just thought, some of them thought height was just your mom and your dad and you get in between.
Yeah.
So like making it relevant and making them have those discussions and actually try to figure out like, how do we get to this? And then another thing that I really liked about your resources was you included some topics in epigenetics,
Hmm.
and like things like CRISPR technology, and these boys love to debate. They love to discuss. So when I rolled out, who should be in control, like should we be able to change our genes,
Hmm.
right? At first, a lot of them, I teach at a private Catholic school, so a lot of them are saying, it's whatever God's plan is. And then I throw the curveball in. Well, what if your brother or sister had some disease that they could change? And all
Hmm.
of a sudden it gets a little more personal and they have to start thinking about it. So I just like genetics and heredity because you can really make it personal and really make it relevant.
I love those discussions with students. It is funny how they can come in with such strong opinions, but the more you question, the more they see that it's a lot harder to draw lines in the sand than we may think. And I always said, my goal is really not to get them committed to like any sort of side, but to really humble them to think things are a lot more gray than we want them to be. Like we want things to be black and white, and that's just not how the world works, you know? Because we're so quick to have an opinion on things and what people do
Mhm.
and the decisions they make when actually it's a lot trickier. So I love that you're having those conversations with them. I wish I could be a fly on the wall in your classroom with all these boys.
Yeah, I mean, and I always tell them that there's never an always in science. I had one of my professors at my college. He always said there's never always because
Yes.
there's something that's probably not been discovered yet or something that we don't know yet. So like I always when they, it's just about trying to teach them how to think like a scientist. And like
Yes.
we don't use the word always. We don't use the word right and wrong for hypothesis. Like yes, it supports your hypothesis, but someone could do another experiment that rejects your hypothesis.
Mhm.
So just keeping an open mind, I think, as you said, high school boys are very, dig their heels in, but just kind of playing that devil's advocate, always asking that further question to really make sure that what they're saying is supported.
Mhm. It's a good life lesson. Like even my 8-year-old has been learning to read the last few years, and he is a firstborn male, so everything is a rule. And so he hated learning to read because he's like, there's all these rules, but then there's all these exceptions. Like he just wants to memorize the rules and apply them. He's like, every rule has an exception. I was like, welcome to literally the rest of your life. Like nothing is going to be that cut and dry, my man.
Yeah.
But he's funny. All right. I want to hear about AP Environmental, your first year. Like, how did you kind of approach that? How did you get started? What did you lean on? Anything you did well that you're like, I'll definitely do that next year? And anything you're like, ooh, I'm definitely going to change this?
Yeah, so funny enough, I'm not teaching AP Environmental next year. They're giving me all 5 sections of bio. So I'm doing 3
Okay.
sections of CP, 2 sections of honors, which I'm excited about because I love biology.
Mhm.
But I did make a list. As I said at the start, I'm very reflective, so I did make a list as I was going throughout the year.
'Cause maybe the next year you'll get it again, you never know.
Exactly, right? So, one of the things that I learned about an AP class is that it is very fast, right? Especially with AP Environmental, there are 9 units with 99 total topics. The CED recommends about 140 days on the maximum side, 140 days to teach all the material. At my school, when you got done with, we had an 8-day cycle. One of the days was a drop day. So we're essentially meeting 7 of the 8 days.
Mm.
You throw in the random trips, the random in-service. Then you throw in the fact that they do Kairos because it's a Catholic school. And paired after Kairos is the senior trip. That's 2 straight weeks I didn't have, guys. So when I really boiled it down and you take out the testing days, I had about 110 days
Whew.
to teach in 140 days of worth of
Mhm.
material. So what I learned was, the CED gives you each unit how it's weighted. So I had to use that weighting and say, okay, they weight unit 4, 6, 7, 9 more than unit 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. Okay, so I need to prioritize those things. And then looking at some of the material and saying some of this just is going to have to be done at home, right? I'm just going to have to assign a topic at home because I don't have the time and I think it's not worth our class time to do together.
Mhm.
So some of those things were just, you have to do it at home. And I'm going to have to just give you a quiz on it to check that you did it and took your notes.
Right.
And then also the labs. Labs, especially AP labs, are very involved. So I had to make sure that the labs I chose covered multiple topics in a unit and had a lot of bang for our buck. So things like soil testing, water quality testing, those are the labs that I had to do. There were so many labs I could have done, but when you're limited on time, I didn't have it, and I had to make sure that they're a lot of bang for your buck.
And were you getting those labs from the lab manual for AP Environmental, or were you choosing like alternates that you were doing for those kind of topics?
So I did do the soil testing, which was straight from the
Okay.
AP classroom. But then my first tip, that will lead me into this answer is getting into the Facebook group, the
Hmm.
National APES Teachers Group. Now, it can be tricky, and I fell for that in the summer. I remember I reached out to 3 or 4 APES teachers in my local area that I connected on the group with, and I fell into the trap of, like, looking at what everyone was doing and was going like, "Man, like, I am not ready for this,
Yep.
like, I don't have the time, and this,
100%.
and that."
Or these people are way smarter than me. That's what I thought in the
Yeah.
AP bio group. I was like, I don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, and I realized that, not everyone is doing all of these things, right? These people are just posting the things that they're doing, like, but I was looking at all the teachers thinking that everyone's doing all these things. So, like, my tip would be get in the Facebook group because people share their labs, they share their pacing guides, they share their PowerPoints, they share everything.
Hmm.
So, like, in terms of creating the content, I didn't have to worry about that. It was all there. Just making sure that you go in with, like, a focus and saying, "I'm looking for a Unit 7 PowerPoint. That's what I'm going in for. Don't get distracted."
100%.
And that's where I got some of the labs. Like, some of the labs because some of the AP classroom labs were very involved, very timely, like, multiple day things that I didn't have time for. So then saying, "Okay, I wanna do the AP classroom lab 12. Let me go on the Facebook group, see if someone modified this for a 40-minute schedule or a 45-minute schedule."
Yeah, that's great.
I would say another tip is practice math skills
Mm.
because APES is a lot of dimensional analysis, and kids, for whatever reason, just do not want to do dimensional analysis. They don't want to set up the picket fence. They don't want to
Hmm.
do it. And then also just practice FRQ writing because that is a struggle for guys. They look for very specific answers. They don't want fluff. It's not English class. So practicing that from day one was something that, I think I would keep for next year.
That is one of the hardest things to train them is from they're so used to just trying to hit like a 10-page paper limit. And I'm like, no, I literally need the opposite. I want you
Hmm.
to write as few words as possible to answer
Yeah.
this question. I don't want any of your fluff and like taking up all the things.
Yeah.
That's great advice. Anything else for AP?
Yeah, I have 2 more. Peer grade FRQs, and there's something that you can find on Teacher Pay Teachers, also in the Facebook group called Point No Point, where they'll take previous answers from previous FRQs, and, you essentially have to go through and say, like, would you give them a point or not? Because it starts to teach them, like, why are you giving that one a point, not this a point? And they have to actually work through it. And then peer grading the FRQs. So what I did is, once pretty much like every Friday or, I try to do every Friday. I do FRQ Friday, and we would grade the grader, right? So, like, it wasn't so much that I'm grading the FRQ itself. I want to grade how you grade because that's teaching you like what to look for. Have to go through and highlight. And in fact, like, I would give a bonus point if your score matched mine, right? So to keep them honest and not just go through it. I would say, "Hey, if your FRQ grade that you gave that group matches mine, I'll give you a bonus point because
Hmm.
that means that you're hitting the nail on the head there." And then last tip, make sure all your exams come from AP Classroom and
Yes.
keep the pacing the same as the national exam because early on it was a struggle, but they came back to me at the national exam. They were like, "I had an hour left for the multiple choice." Like, they're like,
'Cause
"I
they were
had so much
cruising.
time."
Yes.
Yeah. So I would recommend that because, I think sometimes you can get caught up in, giving them I don't wanna make sure they have enough time. It's like, no, like, they have to get used to it, and you rather them have time left over than running out of time.
100%. And when you were doing your test, were you curving your test in like just like the AP exams curved? Were you just kinda were you doing test corrections? Kinda how are you handling that? Because I do think when we use the AP provided questions, obviously they're not gonna do as well as if we wrote the
Yeah.
questions. So then there has to be some sort of balance there.
Yeah, so I started out doing test corrections, which went fine, but, it got to the point where it was just too much for me to keep up with, so I ended up doing a curve, but in order for them to get the curve, they had to complete what's called a focus sheet. So
Okay.
you can if anyone's teaching APES, they can find these on the Facebook group. Someone did them, but, I kinda modified them based off of, what I was kinda teaching in that unit, but they had to do this focus sheet, and it was an in-depth. They essentially had say there was 12 topics for a unit, they'd have 12 questions they had to answer, and they had one sheet of paper, right? An 8 by 11. Sometimes if it was more in depth, I'd let them use front and back. Most of the times I'd say, you just get the front side of this paper. You have to answer this. So you have to be really concise. It's a focus sheet. You have to answer the question, but you have to make sure you fit it all in. If they did that, then I would give them a curve because it showed me that you're putting in the work. And some guys just didn't do the focus sheets, and they also didn't get the curve, which they struggled. But the guys at the end of the year also said the focus sheets like were helpful because I gave them all back at the end of the year. And you essentially had a study guide, a little cheat sheet study guide
Mm.
for units 1 to 9 to study for the national exam.
So this is something they make before the test?
Yep.
Okay,
So I
cool.
give it to them. I give it to them at the beginning of the unit. Now, how many guys actually do it throughout the unit? Not many. Most of them wait till the last, day or so, but it allows them to focus it because, I would make the focus sheet based off the types of questions I was using on the test. So it allowed them to focus. We went through a lot of notes.
Right.
Here, I'm going to focus what you should be kind of paying attention to. And if they did it, they saw better test scores and they also got the curve. So it was a win-win.
Yeah, and you're not grading them. It's just like, this is for you. So, like, if you want this, then yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Okay, let's talk classroom management and just what you feel like is important about teachers and students in that dynamic outside of just academics and teaching them what they need to learn.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that I learned was connection. And like you kind of hear it all the time, you got to build relationships, relationships are, the most important. And my first year, like I didn't really grasp that. Like I was like, well, but I got to teach the content. Like, and, I realized this year and like my first month was a little rocky because I kind of went in with the same mindset of like, I got to get through the content. Here's my pacing. Again, I'm a type A, like very
Mhm.
organized. Like
Yeah.
I have my pacing guide done for the year. If it says I gotta do this on Monday, then I gotta do this on Monday. And what I quickly realized was that, like, that I just wasn't gonna get anywhere. Like, I was burnt out because, they weren't listening, they weren't giving me, like, their full attention. And when I kinda made that switch to really start with, like, the connection point of understanding that, like, hey, like, if I can start to build these connections, these relationships, not only are they gonna be more invested in my class, more invested in myself, but, like, all of a sudden their behavior is gonna start getting a little better too because they have that relationship with me. Not
Mhm.
to say that the behavior was perfect all year, we know that. They're high school boys,
Mhm.
right? You have 15 high school boys in the same class, like, you can only imagine some of the things they're gonna try and do. But that connection point was something that a lot of them want, a lot of them look for, and it made my life better too, right? Like, instead of, like, dreading that class being like, "Oh, man, I got bio 1 today," like, I went in being like, "Oh, I can't wait," like, I'm gonna catch up with these guys, kinda be a little more focused on those relationships, and then the content comes a lot easier. It's easier to ask them to do something when you have that connection point, that relationship, than when you don't have it.
It's so true. It changes everything, but I'm the same as you exactly. Like, all my lesson plans I feel like are in pen, and it's like I wanna get through this because 'cause I'm excited to go through this with you, but
Mhm.
they're not excited about biology, but when they are excited about you and spending time with you, then it all kind of flows from there.
Yeah. And I think that connection point, like, it started with, I don't have my own classroom. No one really has their own classroom. I was in 2 rooms and sometimes, moving from one room to the other, but I really tried every day to, like, greet the kids at the door every day.
Mhm.
Like, I know that I need to have the prime time up on the board. I know I need to have this, and that ready to go, but I just found it more important to just greet them, give them a fist bump, handshake,
Mhm.
welcome them in, just get that connection point. 'Cause I do think a lot of kids, they just kinda go through the day. They're happy, more than happy just to float through the day. It's something that I know you said, like, all the time, like, I use popsicle sticks. Like, at the beginning of the year, like, I used popsicle sticks probably for the first semester, 1, to know their names, but 2, to
Yeah,
be like, "Hey, like, you're not escaping me. Like, I'm
right.
calling on you even if I'm asking you what you're doing this weekend, like, you're gonna tell me something. We're gonna
Exactly.
talk." And by the second semester, I didn't have to use them because a lot more guys wanted to participate. I'd cold call 'em guys. They knew it was coming, right? If they were looking away, like, they knew I was coming for them. But, yeah, I think that connection point and then also just, like, consistency, like,
Mhm.
beyond the academics, like, a lot of these high school guys, like, they need that consistency day to day. It doesn't mean we do the same exact thing every day, but, like, a similar structure, like even though I only have 40 minutes, like, I rarely do things for more than 20 minutes. Like, it's probably 10, 15-minute clips. I'm trying to, like, do this and do that, but they can rely on the fact that they know that, like, there's gonna be some type of prime time. I kinda switched up the prime times, like, every so often, like, sometimes it was exactly kinda how you would do them. Like, come in, something on the board, 5 like, 3 to 5 questions, use your notes, not your neighbors. They got tired of me saying that.
Yeah.
But, I'd kinda switch it up. They knew there's gonna be some type of prime time. Sometime it was like, you have 60 seconds to discuss the question with your partner, and then we'll share as a group. But they always knew that there was some kind of warm up going on. There's gonna be some type of mini lecture, some type of activity, and probably some time to start their homework. And they thrived on that. Like, they knew that consistency. They knew, like, what to expect.
Well, and they know you're gonna actually do stuff that matters. Like, when they just don't when there's not a plan or consistency, they just are like they're going in thinking, "How can I derail this?" And, like, do as little as possible,
Yeah.
as opposed to, like, "No, the train's already moving. I'm inviting you to jump on board because like, we're going." I'm
Yeah.
proud of you doing prime times with a 40-minute class period.
Yeah, I mean,
That's tough.
there were certainly some days that, if we had a lab day, I would skip it. I just, kinda had to get them
Right,
in and going. But, like, as I said, like, I would try to mix it up with them, but, like, just knowing that there was some type of consistent warm up that they were gonna have to do. They were gonna have to look at their notes. They were gonna have to have a discussion, right? Like, the days that they weren't writing something down, they were discussing, I was still looking for a back and forth conversation,
right,
right? So, like, the grade was still gonna be there, but if only your partner was talking, then you weren't gonna get the grade. And I really pushed some of my, like, upper kids in my class that if you know the answer, don't just tell your partner the answer, try to help them get to the answer. Just things like that, right? Yes, it's easy for you to just tell your partner the answer, but that's not gonna help him out, and it's not gonna really help you out, right? Why not try to ask questions and try to push and prod and get them to get to the answer, which I also really enjoyed those types of prime times because there was, like, a connection point between our students. They got to talk, right? Like, these kids just want all they wanna do is talk, so, "Hey, like, you have 3 minutes here, I want you to discuss bio," and I would tell them, I was like, "Hey, if you're done talking about that, you guys can talk about your weekends. You guys can talk about your Mondays, right? I'm fine with that." So it felt like, it was kind of like a give and a take. Like, "Hey, I'll give you some time to talk when you get through this. But then when I talk, then that's when you're gonna shut it
yeah.
down and
When
I'll
I
get through it."
talk, it's you're men not talking.
Yeah.
Exactly. I love that. I think the give and take is so important with high schoolers and just it's like you're seeing them as like young adults and saying like, okay, like you're gonna respect me, I'm gonna respect you. Like we're working on this together. And I love that you're creating that kind of culture within your students with each other too. I think that's so important.
Yeah, and I think, one of the things some of the guys really got excited about it, but when we started doing the prime times, I started to do this little corny thing where I'd say, "Okay, it's time for prime," and then they would all say, "Time." Right? So, like, just like those, like, little goofy things that, like, they're probably like, "Ah, here goes Mr. Crim again, like, making us do this prime time chant." But it's just like a culture building thing in the classroom. Like, you may not be getting this somewhere else, but, like, it may be corny, but hey, we're doing it, and, like,
Mhm.
and some of the guys really, like, were like they're upset if I, like, forgot to do it. They're like, "Whoa, are we not gonna do our primetime chant?"
Right.
And I was like, "Oh, my bad," like, and they would start to lead it.
And it's sweet because then they hear your voice. I always call them like refrains. Like you leave them with these refrains and some of them are silly and some are, more serious and they do remember your voice. Like, I have high school girls who still come back today. Now they're, like, getting married and having babies, which is disturbing. That's a weird thing about teaching high school. Like, it doesn't take long, and then all of a sudden they have these whole lives, but
Yeah.
they'll come back, and one of the things they used to always say when they would leave my classroom is, "Do the right thing, not the cool thing." And some of them were like, "I would think of your voice," like, when I'd be in dilemmas saying, "Do the right thing, not the cool thing." And I was like, "Well, that makes me feel good that you're remembering forever."
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, any misconceptions you feel like that people have about teaching high school that you've kind of learned are different now that you've had that experience with them?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of times, like, and if you're on the wrong side of Instagram, you'll
Yeah.
get a ton of these, is that, like, just students just don't care and aren't motivated.
Mhm,
And I just feel like that's such a big misconception because, like, I'm kinda going through it sometimes in their shoes. Like, I'm currently in my master's program,
mhm.
working towards, my master's of education, and there's times where I have my classes and I'm just like, "Why am I doing this assignment? Like, this seems pointless, right? This doesn't seem relevant to, like, what I need." And I think, like, if you're still teaching, like, just a lot of sit and get, and you're just saying, like, "Well, here's the lesson, like, I don't care how you feel about it, like, here we go." And don't get me wrong, like, sometimes things need to be boring. Like, sometimes these kids need to learn to be bored a little bit. They struggle just to sit in their silence. But, like, if you make it fun, if you make it relevant, if you make it engaging, like, they care. Like, I've seen it where, like, you make something relevant to them. You make it where, okay, hey, like, instead of talking about ecology, we're gonna go outside and we're gonna do a biodiversity sampling lab. Like, we're gonna go to the creek. Like, we're gonna go and test the water and talk about it. All of a sudden, it's like they're motivated. Like, they care to get it done. But, like, if you're just gonna sit and get and just being like, "Well, here's what it is," and you don't try to connect anything, you're gonna struggle. A lot of times, like, there's and especially in biology, like, you can connect it to so many things in their lives. Like, instead of talking about the water problems in California, talk about the local river that they fish at. And all of
Yes.
a sudden, they're like, "Wait, that's going on? There's eutrophication going on?" "Yeah, you ever seen that green stuff?" "Yeah." They're like, "Oh my god, like, how's that happen?" "Well, the farm that's 2 miles up?" "Oh my god, I get ice cream there." All of a sudden, they care because they're like, "Wait a minute, like, I experience these things on my daily life."
Mhm.
So, I think that's a misconception, like, yeah, like, they're not gonna be motivated, they're not gonna care when they have their phone, they have this laptop where they can look everything up, but if you challenge them, if you make them critically think and problem solve, like, especially high school boys, like, they're gonna try and solve the problem.
Mhm. I love that, and that's the life skills we really want them to learn. I think what you said about Instagram is so real too, is, like, the content that gets engaged with on all social media is the content that's negative or like a hot take, and we've even noticed that my best friend helps me with social media because it's not my forte at all. I like the podcast and I like email, and that's pretty much it, but she's always like, "We need to keep doing these, like, controversial reels," and I'm like, "I don't want to." Like,
Yeah.
I know that's what it takes, but that's what, like, that kind of fervor is what feeds it, and I think the hard thing is when we feel, like, really down in the dumps about our students and our job, all we're hearing then is other people's voices that are also struggling, and then, like, the negative we're all just bringing each other down as opposed to, like, your voice is such a positive light to say, "No, like, it doesn't have to be that way." And I really appreciate you encouraging people that way. I think that's super it doesn't have to be this way.
And I think, like, one of the things, like, last year, there's a lot of things about my first year teaching, the where I was at and just kinda some of the faculty that was there, like,
Mhm.
just really bogged me down and allowed me to kinda sit in that negative mindset. And the thing that really, like, was awesome about this experience this year was, like, you don't really hear a lot of that. Like, you
Mm.
really like, there's a lot of, like, positive teachers, a lot of faculty that are happy to be at their job, like, happy to be working there, and that's just a world of difference, right? Because as you said, like, you wanna feed off of whatever you're around. So if you're around negativity, like, that's what you're gonna be. If you're around positive people, you're gonna be positive. So, like, that's one of the things that, like, I really appreciate about this, like, new opportunity, this new school is that, like, a lot of people are positive about working there, and it really helps because you said, like, you go on Instagram, you start getting on the wrong side of things, and everyone's just, "I was students and teaching, and I quit teaching," and,
Mhm.
it's all these things, but, like, I've really enjoyed it, and people always like, some people, when I say, like, I'm a teacher, they're like, "Oh, man." Like, "No, I love it." Like,
Yeah.
I get to essentially hang out with a bunch of high school kids, right? Like, it's a give and a take, like, I'll kinda get on them, they get on me, like, and I get to teach bio, which I love, like, I don't think there's anything better.
I know, I think it's pretty cool way to have, like, an exponential impact on the world based on what you do because, I mean, just like, I mean, how the average person may have anywhere from, like, 0 to 4 kids, and so, yeah, you're gonna influence, like, your own children, but think about in the role of teaching, like, you're gonna influence thousands and then
Yeah.
their lives and everything, so it's a pretty cool opportunity if you're in the right environment, like you said, which I think I just always wanna encourage people who are listening, if you're like, "Well, my school's not like that at all," like, I think sometimes we just feel so stuck where we are, and it's worth exploring. The culture could entirely change your perception of this job based on the school environment you're in.
Yeah, and I will give a plug to one of the books I read over winter break. It's called Teach Your Class Off by CJ Reynolds. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of him,
I'll link it though.
but he was a teacher in Camden, New Jersey,
Mhm.
and then the inner city of Philadelphia. And, like, he really kinda changed my perspective because, like, he was teaching, right, like, a lot of kids that a lot of people had kinda given up on, said,
Mhm.
like, "Nope, like, they're not gonna amount to anything, like, there's nothing left for them," and, like, essentially taking a bad situation and just making the best of it, and his book was awesome. It allowed me to be like, "Yeah, like, I don't like, no matter what situation, and it's, like, what you make of it."
Mm.
Right? So I think to the point of, like, if you're in a situation that's not great and don't get me wrong, there are probably some situations that aren't great, right? Administrations and things like that, but it really is, like, what you make of it.
Mhm. And it doesn't have to be the only option. You can explore other ones. I always say too, like, I don't know if I've talked about this on the podcast, but I always like when I interviewed at a school to have the principal take me on a tour because I like to see how other people, students and teachers respond when they see that admin. And then I also love if you have an opportunity to spend time with someone who teaches there, whether that's sitting through lunch, subbing, and getting to hang out in the department for a day. Like, because then you're going to get the vibe of the department, and that's going to really help you know what's the culture and kind of energy there.
Yeah.
All right, we haven't even talked about this, but we need to, is just grading and balancing that. I know that's gotta be something that you really prioritize as a coach, especially because you have limited time and you're in your master's. Like, you don't have a lot of time outside of school. So, how are you balancing grading, or do you have any hacks to share with listeners about that?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is don't grade everything. Like, if you're still grading everything, I don't know how you're doing it.
Right.
Props to you. But, I mean, I always tell the kids, like, "This may be for a grade. Like, I could grade
Yes.
this."
That's a need to know information and you don't need to
Yeah,
know.
exactly. So, and then I think, like, when you're grading something, like, I always ask myself, like, "What is the purpose of this? Like, why like,
Mm.
if I grade this, like, what's the purpose? Do they need me to grade this?" Is always the question, right? And I did my grade book exactly kinda how you had outlined it, right? Major and minor, you have your completion grades, you have your accuracy grades, and a lot of the homeworks, it's just like, "Hey, like, you can grade it yourself, like, I'm gonna come around, check to see that you did it. You can grade it yourselves, like, we can go over this, but I don't need to collect your homework and give you a grade because" right? Some of the guys, like, they might go home and just Google the answers, right? They might just AI the answers. So why would I take time for me to just, have to go around and, "Oh, let me give you actual feedback," or actually grade this for accuracy because you're gonna have some kids that just go and AI it or Google it. Some kids that actually try, and they're gonna get a worse grade than the kids that Google it because they actually were trying themselves.
Mhm.
So, like, those things just do for completion. Don't stress over that. When possible, as I said, like, have them grade themselves, have them peer grade, right? I always kinda do a quick look over if they're peer grading something, but again, like, they're pretty much halfway there, I just have to do a quick once over. And then for labs, one of the biggest things I did was lab quizzes. I would
Mm.
take the lab, and I would make a quiz that would be 5 to 10 questions, like, things that I need them to know out of this lab, and that way, I'm only grading 5 or 10 multiple choice questions or maybe 4 multiple choice and an open response as opposed to going through this full lab, which would
Mhm.
take forever. Now, I did do like one actual formal lab report, and that took some time. Again, like there's a skill to writing labs, but I don't know if it's necessary for them to really like have 100% down when they get through my class or like just grade a section of it. I'm just going to grade your conclusion. I'm just going to grade your analysis. And then for tests, there's an app called ZipGrade, which is essentially just like an online Scantron, and I mean, it has been a savior because I, taught almost close to 90 students this year, and just to be able to take my phone and just be like, "Oop, okay, 25 out of 30," like, was a
Right.
huge thing as opposed to going through, flipping through all the things or even just doing it by hand. So ZipGrade was a savior.
I'm gonna link that too in the show notes for people to check it out. I wanna hear about these lab quizzes more because I've never done that, and that sounds really interesting. Would you do them just, like, the next day? Would they get to use their lab? Like, what did that
Yeah.
look like practically?
So if I said to them, if we did a lab, depending on how involved it is, and I said, okay, your lab's gonna be due on Tuesday, like they would have a lab quiz. I'd say lab quiz Tuesday, but you need to have your lab done because I let them use it, right? Like because I want them to know that like if they did the work, then I'm gonna reward you for doing the work.
Mhm.
So they would get to use their labs, and the lab quizzes I would most of the time just make it like 10 multiple choice. Maybe I'd have a free response in there, but really it was just going through and saying like, okay, maybe one of the questions was when they were doing one of the steps, like you had to add what to what, right? And I would just put that as a multiple choice question because if someone wasn't following along and maybe writing down the instructions or the steps, they're gonna miss that question because they're gonna be like, I don't know what we mixed, or like for the class average results, what was the highest yield?
Mm.
Right? Like, if you weren't following along, if you don't know how to read your data, you're not gonna do well on it, but if you do, it will be a much quicker thing for you.
Yeah, I love that idea of having them like, if they're graphing the class averages or whatever, and then making the question about because then they're interpreting a graph that they made.
Yeah.
Like, that's a unique idea. Okay, I really like that. I also wanna ask you as a coach too, do you have tutoring? How do you balance that with, like, your coaching schedule? Do you not? How are you providing students who need outside of class support with your schedule?
One of the nice things about our school is that 3rd period so we have now I'm blanking, I think we have 9 yeah, we have 9 periods. We have 9 periods in a day, 3rd period every day is an advising period. So it's a 40-minute block, and it's built into the day where you can go and see any teacher. Now, how many guys actually take advantage of that? Not a lot, but it was really good because we could count on every 3rd period, unless we had a mass day or some special type of schedule, we could count on every 3rd period me being available for any extra help.
And you don't have a classroom, so are you in, like, an office, or do you have, like, a home base in a classroom?
So, typically what they would try to do is they would try to like so they would technically stagger the advising days, like
Okay,
out of the 8 cycle days, I only had to be available for 4, but I was always available.
okay.
And I had one main room, like, there's only one class I taught in a different room. So, like, the one room was pretty much they knew it as Mr. Crim's room. So I would just be stationed there. I didn't have like 30 guys in there. So,
Right.
even if it was two or three, I could take a lab table and if there was someone else using it. But that was awesome.
I love built-in school policies like that. We had that at my last school, and it was just so nice. Like, they weren't al coaches weren't allowed to start practices until 45 minutes after school ended, and it was great because it was like, "Okay, I know you can't tell me you have baseball because I know for a fact you don't."
Yeah. And I got to school pretty early. Like I'm a early riser. So I would get into school and there'd be some guys that say like, hey, like, can you meet before school? I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty much there, like with the cup of coffee ready to go. So if you want to come in early, that's fine with me. But yeah, after school would be sometimes, maybe before baseball practice, starts at 3:45. We get done at 2:45. Like that hour, if someone needed something, but that's when I'm trying to really get like my copies done or,
Right.
anything prepped for the next day.
I love it. Okay, that's really helpful. I'm always just curious to hear how people are doing that. So, last few questions I want to ask you. Do you have a cell phone policy or a school one? And then also AI. How are you handling that? Or do you have a school wide policy? Like, what's that looking like?
Yeah, so we do have a school-wide cell phone policy, which is they have to put them in the phone caddies. So when they come into class, they put them in. If they're seen out with it, it's an automatic detention. So most guys toe the line with that. And then AI, simple policy, like if you're caught using AI, it's automatically 2 Saturdays,
Mm,
detentions, and then if there's anything else, then there's obviously steps after that. I mean, with myself, like, handling AI, like, I had a whole class discussion on it relatively early in the year where I said, like, when to use AI and when not to use AI. So,
mhm.
like, they did some research projects for me this year, and I said, like, one of the great ways of using AI is to give them, a topic and say, like, I need research articles and journals and sources on this topic, right? Like, that's the kind of work that you use AI for, right? Because
Yes.
it could take some time for yourself to go on and, do all that work. Like, just ask AI. Like, they'll probably get you some good sources. You have to check them, make sure you can access them. But I was like, when you don't use it, is to write your actual paper. Like, don't let AI think for you.
Mhm.
Right? That's when you get into trouble. So I try because I think one of the things with AI, and I think I'm seeing more of this, is just like the proper education, like the
Right.
proper use. Like these kids, like we just kind of plop this down and like never said anything about. It. We just said like, hey, don't use it, right? So I tried to actually kind of educate them and say like, why, like when to use it because this can be a powerful tool if we use it correctly.
Right.
And then other things I was like, "Guys, like, when you use AI to write a paper, like, I know it's not you." I'm like, "I know you're not using this M dash. I know you don't know this word. I know you don't this is not your style of writing."
Mhm.
Like, it's just not. So I was like, "You can use AI for a lot of things, but, like, when it comes down to that final product, like, that should be your writing. You should be synthesizing all the information they gave you to put it into your words, your language."
Yeah, I love that. I think that AI education is so important. One of my children's his 2nd grade teacher, who I adored her, but she's definitely old school, and she has trained those 2nd graders that AI lies. And so I remember he would come home from school and be like, "Mom, are you using AI at your job? Because AI lies to you." And I was like, okay, well, AI is, like, not I don't know if I would argue that it is, like, moral and it's out to get me, but I do think you have to be able to assess if it's telling
Mhm.
true things or not. So, like, it was just funny because I was like, "That's an example of, like, a black and white statement where instead of just saying, 'Hey, teaching my 2nd graders to be afraid of AI,' not that he should even use it, what are ways we can teach them to actually utilize it as opposed to being
Yeah.
like, 'AI lies, and I'm gonna fight anyone who uses it.'" But
Yeah. Another thing I used AI for was I would tell guys, like, when you get the notes, if you put your notes into AI, they can come up with test questions.
yeah.
And I said to them, I was like, in biology, there's only so many things that I could possibly ask you about
Right.
certain things. So like if you go in and say, like, here are my notes, could you come up with a practice MCQ for a high school, biology class? Like they're probably gonna give you some good questions. Now again, some of them are gonna be probably bad, but there's gonna be probably some good ones too. So like you could use it to come up with more review questions and help you with reviewing.
Yeah, I love that, and use it for there are good ways to use it that can
Yeah.
definitely help you. Alright, well, the last question I have to ask everybody is, what is one way that you're simplifying your life right now?
Well, I'll give you 2 answers because right now, one way I'm simplifying is going to full body workouts 3 times a week. Because like, right now, even though I don't have a lot going on, I do have some stuff. So, like, I used to try to go, like, 5 days a week, but, like, what would end up happening is something pops up and it's like, "Well, I just did upper body and I have a low I can't do it." Just do full body 3 times a week. Because if I miss a day, I can just do full body again. But the one way I simplified this past year was using packets. And, like, I have to give, like, a bow to you because the packets were so easy to use and simplified my life. Now, it takes a while to print all the packets.
Right.
But once you print them, that entire unit, which would be typically like 3 to 4 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
there wasn't much I was printing, like maybe a one-off thing here or there. And the students loved them. Like the students loved that they were like right there. They knew that they were just flipping to the next page, that the homework was already given to you. The notes were right there. Now there was one time I accidentally printed them double-sided and I got a bunch of backlash from my
Bad
students.
feedback.
They're like, "We want the single-sided." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I was just trying to save some paper." But yeah, they were really simple and like it really was nice because I remember last year, even though I was a type A kind of guy, like last year there's always that one class where you're like, "Oh man, I'm 12 copies short. I got to go run." Like
Mm-hmm.
it's all right there. It's like everything's right there. You don't have to worry about it. Just print and go.
I know, and I'm like, that's just when I would always get I'm like, I'm gonna post up in the copy room and grade some stuff while this is running, and
Yeah.
like you said, like, if it like, in biology, it's only I only had 7 units. I'm only doing it 7 times a
Yeah.
year, so it's long on the front end, but it saves so much on the back end, and students really do I think they just love being able to see the, like, physical progression of where we're going. Like,
It was like a textbook.
yes, but in a more concise way,
Yeah.
aesthetically pleasing also too, I guess. Well, not as I guess there's not as many pictures, but I love that you've loved packets. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm so grateful that you gave me some of your time. Is there any way that if listeners want to reach out and connect to you that they can?
I think the easiest way is just my email. So acrim, CRIM 0033 at gmail.com.
Awesome.
If anyone wants to connect, that's the easiest way.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alex. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode and my conversation with Alex. There are a lot of links we mentioned, and those can all be found in the show notes at itsnotrocketscienceclassroom.com/episode 245. And if you have any questions about the It's Not Rocket Science curriculum that he mentioned he uses, or the Secondary Science Simplified Virtual Professional Development Bundle that he has used as well, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. You can always email me at rebecca@itsnotrocketscienceclassroom.com. Now, before I let you go, if you have not left a review for the podcast yet and a rating, I would love it if you would do so, especially if after listening, you just feel energized going into this new school year to prioritize connection and consistency over content coverage. I absolutely loved his attitude about all of that. And now moving forward, that's kind of the end of our initial month of me sharing these guest episode conversations. I loved ending on Alex's just because I thought his words and his wisdom, again, that are beyond his years, I think are such a good encouragement for the heart and soul. Just a great mindset to have going into a new school year. Next week, we're going to dive into some back to school specific content I'm really excited to share with you. And then if you've loved these guest episodes as much as I have, don't worry. I have 8 more to share with you, and those will be coming about once a month over the next 8 months. So I cannot wait to get those out to you. All right, teacher friends, that wraps up today's episode. If you're looking for an easy way to start simplifying your life as a secondary science teacher, head to itsnotrocketscienceclassroom.com/challenge to grab your classroom reset challenge. And guess what? It's totally free. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you here next week. Until then, I'll be rooting for you, teacher friend.